We've all heard of quiet quitting, but are employers now quietly laying you off? Are they becoming helicopter leaders? How are they doing it? Are they able to lay you off without even paying you? Are they using a loophole to do that? We better talk about this right now. Welcome back to This Baker Life. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, you get lots of videos like this, blah, blah, blah. Everybody says that, I know. But today we're going to talk about quiet quitting. We're going to talk about quiet layoffs. So we've all heard the big buzzword of quiet quitting, haven't we? And we're kind of sick of hearing it. But the fact that, employees out there are quietly quitting on their employers, whether that be because they're using remote access or whether because they're doing it in the office, whatever it is, they're quietly working their way out. They're doing just enough work to be quitting on you. But are employers doing this same exact thing? The reality is, right now, we have employers actively requesting or even demanding that their employees come back to head office. They stop their remote work, they stop their hybrid work, and they demand that you return to their head office. Here's the problem. In a lot of cases, people were hired in a remote setting during the COVID-19 pandemic. And if they were, oftentimes they're 2 hours up the road. Now, wait a minute. Let's pause. Is somebody 2 hours up the road really going to be able to return to the office? That's the real question. Now, there's two things that could be happening here when they do make this demand, and we're going to talk about the legalities of it in some ways too, although I am not a lawyer, so if you do have a situation you're in right now that you think needs to be looked at, make sure you contact a legal representation. But if you are seeing this happening, this is becoming more prevalent. You are not alone. And so if you are somebody who was hired in 2020 or later to a remote role that now all of a sudden your head office is demanding you come back, it's entirely possible this is a quiet layoff. Now, why is this a quiet layoff? All they're doing is demanding that you come back to work. The problem is they hired you knowing that you were 2 hours away in many cases. I've in fact seen this last week at a conference, this exact situation. Somebody living in a small town 2.5 hours away from the head office of the place that they're working at. Now they're being told that to keep their job, they have to go and return to head office, like they had to before the pandemic. The problem is, before the pandemic, this person would never have been hired by this company because they were too far away. And unless they were willing to relocate, they wouldn't get the job. But what if that employer is having maybe monetary issues, market issues, whatever it is, and they say, let's call some of the workforce? A lot of them can say, wait a minute. All we have to do, we hired 200 employees during the pandemic. 200 of them are remote. All we have to do is demand they come back to work. And somebody who lives 2 hours down the road is likely to quit. And therefore, automatically, it's a layoff without ever having to pay a severance, without ever having to pay existing benefits, without ever having to provide job transition training. This is truly what's happening. Now, the other thing is, there's two things that could be happening here. The other thing is, helicopter leadership is becoming prevalent. CEOs, COOs, people up in the higher ups of a lot of companies are really not trusting their employees any longer. They don't even like the hybrid work. And so like a helicopter parent where you've got, dads and moms who are helicoptering, hovering over their kids the moment they fall because they don't let them learn to fall, the employer is kind of doing the same thing. So even if they're not quietly trying to lay you off, even if they're just wanting everybody back to work, this is a form of helicopter leadership. What's the reason for this? Now, some employers will tell you it's because we have that physical footprint, we have that overhead, we have that bricks and mortar we're paying for, and it's all empty. And that's fine. That's one reason. But the other reason is that, and it can't be your only reason, it's not. But the other reason is to be able to watch what you're doing every day throughout the day. Now, the interesting thing is that studies are showing that remote work is actually more productive because you have less smoke breaks, less water cooler talk, less lunch breaks. Everybody's getting their work done by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But what those leadership hate is that they're paying you for till 5 o'clock. And so even though you might be done your work and you might have done it very well, if you're done at 2, it's really upsetting them. Some people go above and beyond at this point, but otherwise they'll call you quietly quitting because you stopped at 2 p.m. because you ran out of work to do. That's not quietly quitting, that's efficiency. And so is it right for us as employers to really start to demand that they come back to the office? Because here's what's going to happen. The same amount of work is going to get done. They're just going to work till 5. That's all. It's not going to change. If you think you're going to be more productive, it's not going to work. Studies already show that these employees are more productive at home or in a hybrid environment because they get their work done and they move on with their day. Yes, they might be moving on with their day at 2:30 in the afternoon, but do you know who this helps? This helps that single parent. This helps that person who has so much on the go. This helps parents who are heavily, actively into sport. This is a huge benefit for parents. This is a huge benefit for employees in general, whether you're a parent or not. It gives you the opportunity to participate in the community. It gives you the opportunity to go out and do other things that provide passion and provide opportunity and provide happiness in your employee's life. Because guess what? Your employees don't live for you. You rent them. The reality is you rent your employees. You are paying rent for their lives. And if you're doing that, make sure that you just understand and respect that the rest of their life does not involve you. And if they have their work done by 2 o'clock and your work is getting done and there's good things happening for your company and it's because of your employees, there's no reason to complain about the fact that they're leaving at 2 o'clock because they're going to do other passions that help them be more passionate for you, help them work harder for you, and therefore you get better work from them. And so therefore you as a company do better. And so this is not quiet quitting. This is something where the employee is getting the work done. Now, you could increase the workload if you wanted to. You'll probably get more done that way than if you had pulled them back into the office. Because I'm going to reiterate this. I'm telling you right now, the same amount of work that they do and finish at 2 o'clock, they will do up until 5 o'clock when you pull them back into work. You will not get a single ounce of extra added work done unless you've piled something new on them. But if you do pile something new on them, you could have done that remotely. Then they'd be done at 3 instead of 2 and you'd get a whole extra hour of work. So the reality is demanding people to come into work does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. There's just too much evidence that working from home, and it's not everybody. Some people do get up and start watching all the talk shows. So I know that. I mean, there's going to be commenters on the video that say, well, there's people that are super lazy and they get up and they have 7 coffees and they watch a couple of episodes on Netflix and then they might do a couple of hours of work. Okay, but guess what? Hire better. If that's the person that you have hired, don't do that. Hire better. Check references. Be better at selecting. Be better at vetting your employees. That's not their fault. Well, it is their fault because they're not doing the work, but it's also your fault for selecting someone like that. So instead of working on saying, well, all my employees are the same, they're all watching Ellen at 10 o'clock in the morning, no, that's not true. And you know that's not true. So why are you lumping them all in? It's just a bad selection process you had for that role. So you just didn't pick the right person. And that's your problem, not the rest of your entire workforce now demanding that they come back to work, now demanding that they come in. And what's the question legally? With somebody you hired remotely during the pandemic, knowing they were 2 days or 2 hours down the road, now you're saying you have to come in. What if that person was hired specifically in a remote role? Is it legal? And if it is legal, is it ethical to now say you must come into the office if you never told them that that was a potential thing down the road? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But I would suggest that anybody in this situation contact one, because it seems to me, at least from an ethical standpoint, an employer asking somebody who was hired remotely, intentionally far away from their head office, now demanding that they come in, is highly unethical, it is highly disrespectful, and it's possibly not legal. but I don't know. You'll have to check that out. So here we sit, 12 minutes into this video, 12 minutes into a rant, and I hate ranting about stuff. I like to be positive. You know, the rest of this channel is mostly positive. We want to make sure we stay positive, but something doesn't smell good here. Something doesn't smell good here, and people are picking it up. Other employees or employers are following other employers, and this whole helicopter leadership, or worse, this quiet layoff, is happening a lot of places, and they think we don't notice. They think we don't see it. They think this is great. You know, we're getting these employees to quit, which means we don't have to lay them off. All we have to say is come back into head office, and that's a demand of ours, and you can keep your job. The problem is most of them aren't going to move, and so therefore they quit. They go and they find other work, and you've nice and quietly laid them off with no legalities, no severance, no additional benefits, nothing. Cost you nothing as an employer to get rid of 50, 60, 70 employees just by demanding they come back to work. Well played, but we're on to you now. So here's and if you're not doing it, it's because you are a helicopter leader who doesn't trust your employees, because most of them are done at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But it's quite possible they've done all their work and potentially even more based on studies we've seen. And so therefore, they're now allowed to go follow those passions and become better people in their lives and work better for you, in fact. But you don't trust them because they're not working till 5. That's the wrong way to look at it. I hope employers watch this and see that this is not a good trend. This is a trend that needs to stop. It's a trend that is unethical, especially if the intent is to get these employees to quit. And if not, if it's a helicopter leadership strategy, then you need to find a place that trusts you. You need to find a place that understands you are a professional and you do your work. Now, again, if it's somebody that doesn't do their work, it is the selection process of the employer that was the problem, not the rest of the workforce. And so why are we blaming and impacting and influencing the rest of our workforce based on 1 or 2 individuals who get up and have 7 coffees and watch TV all morning? Those 1 or 2 individuals need to be dealt with, but they can be dealt with on the side, and you need to deal with your selection process as part of it. Those are my thoughts on this. What are your thoughts? Make sure you like and comment. Leave some comments. Are you going through this? If you're going through this and you can help others understand what the legalities of all of this is, please leave a comment, because we want to help each other. That's the whole point of the TBL channel, is to make sure that we help each other in these types of situations in the world, in these types of situations in business, and so on. So if you can leave a comment if you're going through it and you know some of the legalities, if you're a lawyer and you know some of the legalities, would love to get your comments. Leave comments. Let's talk about this, and let's start the discussion. It's so important. I'm all wound up here. I'm stumbling over my words. So instead, I will stop this here at 15 minutes or so and say, let's go. Let's have this conversation. What do you think? What's happening? What's happening to you? Share it with us, and then like and subscribe to this channel, and we'll talk all about it throughout the next few weeks.